Good morning, everybody, and welcome to another of the Mosaic WealthTech Talks webinar discussions. I'm joined today by three panelists from the industry, relevant in, I think, certainly in Europe and in Asia, and we're going to be talking about the modern technical infrastructure for the wealth management industry, where it is now, what it's constituted of, the drivers that are forcing change and movement, and how that will look moving forward, and basically how firms can get there. Obviously, the infrastructure, if you think about all of the demands on the sector, is a very important aspect of how wealth managers respond to the changing client base, changing regulatory, the movement in technology, the fast movement in technology with so many new products out there, and specifically the needs of advisors, clients, and their business in a time where the economics of wealth management are perhaps not what they were before. So I'm going to ask each of my guests to introduce themselves and give an opening statement. Quickly, on the admin side, we'll be talking for roughly 50 minutes, perhaps a little bit longer. When you're listening in, you are able to ask us questions. We'll take those questions at the end. If we are unable to answer any questions, please feel free to email them through to us and we'll try and come back to you. So I'm joined today quickly. I'll introduce the members of the panel by Josh Cogan, who's Associate Partner, Head of Banking UK at the consulting firm Synpulse. I'll ask you to introduce yourself in a minute, Josh. By Mahesh Bulchandani, who is CEO and Director of Europe for Singapore headquartered FinIQ technology firm, and by Matteo de Marchi, who is Head of Product Innovation at Finantix, a firm who had a big piece of news yesterday. So if I just go around the panel clockwise, starting with Josh. Josh, could you just introduce yourself, your role, and give your perspective on the topic that we're talking about today?
Yeah, thanks a lot, Stephen, and good morning, everybody. My name is Josh Cogan. As Stephen said, I'm an Associate Partner and Head of Wealth Management at Synpulse here in the UK. For those of you who don't know Synpulse, we're a management consultancy. We serve the banking and insurance sectors globally. We've been in the wealth management private banking sector specifically for over 25 years. And we really focus on helping firms design and deliver the latest propositions and supporting technology for those propositions. So today's topic is something we're constantly thinking about, and I'm sure front of mind for everybody who's joined in. In terms of what constitutes a modern technology infrastructure, from our side, I think it's really all about being positioning firms to react to and take advantage of the challenges and opportunities that technology are presenting to the industry. So I'm sure we'll discuss it all today, but really thinking about flexible open architecture, having control over your data, increased workflow automation, quick product development, and enhanced client experience.
Okay, Josh, thank you very much. And Matteo, going around the screen, if I could ask you to introduce yourself and your view on this topic.
Yeah, hello everybody. Yes, my role here in Finantix is Head of Innovation. So my daily job is take care about architecture, take care about new framework, new technology, new standards to introduce to our product to support our project in wealth management environment. It's a pleasure to be here discussing on this topic because I think that is a very hot topic, mostly because in the last year, the digitalization of processes is pushing up because COVID-19, let's say, pushed let's say the movement of let's say paper-based process to digital world. And so most of our clients is approaching to digitalizing their environment and changing their current infrastructure to be ready for this new challenge, let's say. There are different topics that are contributing on pushing this big change that is coming in, probably that will be very hot also in the next couple of 3 years. And so it's a pleasure for me to discuss about that here and try to give my experience that is based on daily discussion that I have with our prospects, our clients that are asking us to how to involve and improve their environment to be ready to these new opportunities.
Great, thank you, Matteo. And finally, over to Mahesh. Quick introduction to yourself, please, and your perspectives, opening perspectives on the topic.
Sure. Good morning, good evening, everybody, depending on which time zone you are in. So I'm the CEO and director for FinIQ in Europe. Before that, I was with FinIQ in Singapore, which is where the company is headquartered. FinIQ is a software company focusing on wealth management and private banking. It's a very specialized company. We run our own multi-issuer, multi-dealer platform as well. And in my experience, what I've seen is that providing technology solution to this industry requires a combination of three skills. One is to be able to understand how the individuals invest and what they are looking for in their single investment or portfolio. Second is to be able to understand treasury and capital markets world, because that's where bulk of the money flows into treasury world or capital markets world. And thirdly, to be able to understand technology. So these three things together, they all come into play when one is providing a technology solution for wealth management. And we are quite proud to be a leader in that space. We are about 400 plus people, as Stephen mentioned, headquartered in Singapore, and I represent the European business.
Great, Mahesh, thank you. Okay, so let's get into the discussion. So I think to start off with, it would be good just to understand where we are and how we've got here. So I think Matteo is focused very much on the sort of design of the infrastructure and the implementation of new opportunities, new products, new ways of developing. How would you describe en masse, if it's possible, where you see the wealth management technical infrastructure today? So, what does it consist of? How did it get here?
Yeah, it's a very chaotic moment right now, for the reason that I just mentioned before. The current status is not so good, I would say, because there's a lot of institutions that are still based on, let's say, legacy systems, are still based on paper-based processes. They don't put much attention to the interaction with the new type of clients, new kind of their clients. They are implementing their business as they implemented maybe 10 years ago or 15 years ago. This is the current status. But as I said before, there's a new input, let's say, new item that is coming out on the last year, I would say, that is changing the game from a point of view, because banks and institutions in general discovered that their clients are changing. Millennium right now is one of the most important clients for them, and those kind of clients for sure used to interact with institutions in a completely different way than how they interact with their fathers before. And also because right now, to provide a good advice to your clients, you have to have an holistic view, not just managing transactions, but you have to propose and show them and collaborate with them, advise them, and normally 360-degree view on their assets and their positions, and planning with them the future with a real fresh technology. And this is why, from a point of view, the game is changing right now. And it will happen much more in the next couple of years, where many institutions will have to approach on these changes, have to support their the business view in a different way, moving on digitalizing the full entire business process that they have to implement. But again, this is, from a point of view, is just the first step of a long journey that will happen probably in a couple of years.
Perfect, thank you, Matteo. Mahesh, you referenced, I think Matteo mentioned a changing client base. You also referenced an understanding of the client at the beginning as one of the three pillars that is important in being able to service the market. Do you think wealth managers in general understand the clients and the changing client nature, and therefore is their technology up to date with that?
So I would look at the industry in two ways. One is the private banking industry, and second is the mass affluent or retail industry. And then look at the regions: Asia, Europe, and US as three broad regions. So I would say broadly, when I look at the acceptance of technology in delivering better solutions to clients, Asia is currently ahead. Not only in terms of spend, but also looking at more newer ways of doing things, accepting new technology, buying technology where they cannot build themselves. In all those dimensions, currently Asia is leading the way, followed by the Middle East, followed by Europe, and I think US is way behind. So this is the way I see as a regional pattern in terms of their technologies, and we hope that Europe and US will catch up. And as Matteo said, the arrival of COVID and the way that has disrupted the business will probably accelerate Europe and US catching up to the experience of Asia, and hopefully even doing better than what Asia has done. In terms of the industry, I find that the mass affluent and the retail industry is more in line with the changing client behavior, simply because they see it in the retail world. They see the way deposits are coming, the way the credit cards are used, the way the spending behavior is. They see the competition from Revolut. They see the competition from TransferWise. So to them, it's clear that sooner or later, these fintech players will come and compete with them in the wealth management industry as well. So they want to get ready. I think private banking, to a large degree, has been cushioned from these fintech players as competition. So they are a bit behind in understanding the changing way of consumer behavior.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, Mahesh. Josh, so we've got a changing client base. We've got some competitive threats coming into the market that maybe aren't immediate because they might, from the wealth management perspective, deal with a different type of client, less valuable client, younger client, etc. What other aspects do you see as forcing sort of technological infrastructural change in wealth management? Are there other things that when you talk to clients that are moving them forward, make them think differently?
Yeah, definitely. I think, Mahesh kind of mentioned the consumer demand aspect, and there are two other aspects. One is the business environment in general. So I think there were a set of conditions kind of going into COVID, which were forcing clients to think about this. And that was really, especially in the UK, we were seeing a lot of fee compression, right? And with shrinking margins, there was a need for increased operational efficiency. And we saw a drive across the market to with players looking to achieve scale, right? And the issue, I think, a lot of the players who went through M&A acquisition was that scale didn't come with an equivalent reduction in the cost to serve. So what that means really now, people really do need to look at how they can achieve that scale while reducing the cost to serve, and that's where the modern technology infrastructure comes into play. Just one more point on that. That was kind of pre-COVID, and I think that certainly still exists right now. But 12 months ago from now, I don't think any of us would have thought there was an absolute necessity that we'd be shifting to not only a remote first workforce, but a remote first proposition, right? So I think certain companies were struggling even with getting their workforce remote, let alone doing all of the processes and client journeys fully remotely. So I think they're the key driving factors, really.
Fantastic. Thank you, Josh. So back to Matteo. By the way, guys, I have some background noise. I don't know if you were all hearing that.
I hear it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'll see if I can do something about that after the question. So Matteo, if you look at what firms have been focusing on to improve their infrastructure, so COVID-19 is a driver, client changing needs, expectations, demographics is a driver, new competition is a driver, cost efficiency is a driver. What have they been doing to improve their infrastructure over the last 2 to 3 years?
Yeah, I think that this is the key for, especially for a software vendor, how to support in a good way this change. I would say that there are different opportunities right now for institutions that are new technology, new environment that are coming out recently that could help exactly to solve the problem that we just mentioned. For example, efficiency. AI could be a very good and important, let's say, could play a very important role in the next in this changing, but also the possibility to have a scalable and flexible architecture. Cloud, for example, is something that will change the way to create infrastructure in the wealth management as well. I would say that for supporting this change, the most important thing to offer to institution is, I would say, freedom. so the problem here, the risk here is that institution, let's try to go into this change and let's say create another, permit me, it's another legacy layer. So something that could help now, okay, could solve the problem now, but will be a legacy in another 2 or 3 years. Okay, this is the one of the most problem that we have to solve with that type of clients. You know, the life cycle of the technology is completely different from the life cycle of the business, and technology is changing yearly. Every 6 months we have a new technology, a new standard that is coming out. So what we have to support, if I am a bank, the most important thing is build an infrastructure and architecture flexible enough for support me to change my decision taken now in 6 months or in a year without re-implementing from scratch everything another time. No, so having, for example, modularity is perfect in this game. Because having a modular approach, you can break down your full business point, the overview picture of your business in different area, and allows you to change those area whenever a new technology is coming out that is better of the current one for that specific purpose. And if you are able to put in place an architecture that easily allows you to inject this new technology or replace an existing part of your application in an easy way, this is a key for me. So in this way, for example, microservices approach would be perfect. The combination of cloud and microservices would be a very good point that can support this kind of flexibility. And yeah, from a point of view, this is the main point. Then the technology can change. You can select one product, a software provider, or another one. But if you don't have a clear big picture in your mind that offers you to scale quickly in a new investment tomorrow without, let's say, lose money or whatever I've done so far, this is the key from my point of view.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Matteo. That's an interesting perspective, isn't it, about the changing life, or the difference between the business life cycle and the client life cycle, sorry, and the technology life cycle, and aligning the two. And I wonder, Mahesh, do you see firms sort of responding to market needs, investing money, and then having to keep repeating themselves because the market is moving fast? I mean, are they taking, therefore, too shorter-term decision-making process and action process when they should be thinking longer term?
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, as Matteo said, this is a ever-changing space. And I see this changing from two perspectives. One is, of course, technology perspective, newer standards, newer way of doing things. And second is the business itself. So I would broadly think about the business here as consisting of three journeys. One is the client journey. Second is the internal journey within the bank. So that's the connectivity and workflow between the investment advisor, the product team, compliance, audit, credit, and so on. And then the market journey. So depending on the type of asset, this may go to exchange, this may go to dealers, this may go to issuers. So there are different players in the market where the journey concludes and then comes back to the private bank and eventually back to the customer. So when you look at automating all of these journeys, clearly modularity of the technology is very important, as Matteo mentioned. The second factor I would add is the connectivity. So if you are offering a solution to a client, no client is going to replace their entire technology stack with one single solution. They will come and say, I've got 80% of the solutions which I can live with, and there are 20% where I either have nothing or I have something where this is way inadequate and I need to buy something new, I need to replace it. So how do you fit in there and make sure that you connect to the remaining 80% to provide a seamless experience to the client for the client journey, to the internal stakeholders, and to the marketplace? That becomes a crucial part. So I would say modularity and connectivity, these are two technical components which are important, and they need to deliver those three functional journeys.
Interesting. So it's complex. So, Josh, so we have this issue of diverse drivers of change and market reaction. We have the issues of modularity, we have connectivity, and maybe aligning decision-making across different speeds of change in different life cycle or different areas of the business. So what is it you see firms focusing on now to maybe come up with answers to some of these questions?
So I think nobody has a crystal ball, right? And there's no, excuse me, there's no one size kind of fits all approach, or no clear answers to what's going to be the leading proposition in 5 to 10 years. So what I see more and more is that clients are looking to build an infrastructure that enables them to react quicker, right? And one very good way of looking at it is to build a set of principles upon which you want to build an architecture, right? And I think I touched on some of them. You need to be more modular, and you need to have more open architecture in order to roll out solutions quicker and get quicker to market. And also just to be able to test out solutions in a more rapid manner. So I think the key is really to, instead of trying to define exactly what your proposition needs to be in 10 years, to set the foundation for continuous change into the future.
Interesting. So that's the strategic framework. Matteo, if a firm, thinking again of all these drivers, it then has that strategic framework, what does the actual base technology infrastructure look like? Because presumably, this has to function on something. It's like, the iPhone analogy is the obvious one. I can't have an app store without the phone. So what's the base functional platform or infrastructure that allows this flexibility, this connectivity and modularity?
Are you talking really in terms of technology point of view?
Yes. So when we talked yesterday, just in preparation, we were talking about layers. You were talking about different layers.
Exactly.
3 layers.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. What have to be done for sure is not to replace what they have in place right now. So any bank, as I said before, will take your solution and replace what an existing core banking system, for example, whatever. They would like. The goal is move this flexibility, or better, put on top this flexibility of the legacy system that currently you have. For example, having a layer on top of the legacy system that allows you to pump the data from the legacy system in this application layer. But this application layer have to be, agnostic on what are the data provider that is behind. In this way, you offer to the final, front-end application or portals or channels, as you prefer to call them, a coherent, interfaces that can get data and that can manage data together independently from where the data are coming from. Okay, so having a modular layer that is integrated with different data provider but exposed to the final user, a common interface, is I would say that it's a very good approach on taking it on that. And for that, if you think on technology point of view, again, microservices helps in this way. Microservices define that you have a unique and independent piece of code that can be run independently from the others and expose the API for the consumer. If you have this approach, at that point you can select the best module, the best technology for a specific function from different data provider, for different software provided. You can find there's a lot of fintech right now that are coming out that provides specific, very best-in-class function for a specific problem, for a specific domain. So if you are able to define your own infrastructure in a way that is easy for you to get this fintech product and inject it in your environment, you are the winner. Yeah, because at that point you can just work on top of those API and reshaping the front end, the user experience flow, and make your user experience flow the best for you, reusing the best-in-class data provider and software provider behind. And talking about, again, for technology, that is perfect whenever you combine microservices with the cloud native. I mean, with containerization, with virtual environments. Okay, if you are moving out from hardware, from physical hardware, but if you are able to move the concept of service in a real digital environment, virtual environment, using, for example, Kubernetes, or using implementation such as OpenShift, for example, at that point, you are really the orchestrator of a list of services coming from everywhere. And at that point, your architecture is not anymore a legacy layer, but will be stable and can be improved very easily in the future whenever you change your mind, whenever you like to improve your business. This is more, I think that this is the key, and the technology that can support this picture.
Great, thank you. Mahesh, just thinking there about Josh's point about having a set of principles, and then Matteo's point about these layers and this pushing the sort of core back and having this functional point that pumps into the sort of interactive layer. You talked about Asia being ahead. Is that where the APAC market is in terms of technical infrastructure, or is this still a vision that we're talking about here? You're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think these are definitely important factors in making the technology solution live longer, improve the longevity of a solution. So having it more flexible definitely helps. In my experience, the another important factor is what we call as configurability. Can you configure your solution with a changing business environment? So I'll give you two real examples which have hit the market in last 10 years or so. One is in the world of bonds. We now have more variety of bonds. So there were no COCOs before. Now we have COCOs, right? So how do you make sure that you don't have to replace the entire bonds platform simply to deal with COCO as a product? Can you simply configure it, right? Second, we all know that within structured products and derivatives, the regulations have changed quite significantly in last 10 years. So how do you make sure that other than the regulatory layer and the compliance layer, all your other layers remain intact, and your regulatory layer can be configured to meet the ever-changing regulatory requirements? So configuration, in my opinion, becomes very important. There is also the impact on the credit journey. So what used to be an easy credit journey for the client in the past has now become more intensive credit journey. Credit officers are a lot more careful in how they lend against a portfolio. Can those journeys be configured? So having configurability to deal with a changing regulatory or credit environment or changing marketplace where products are evolving, I think becomes very important. If you look at structured products as an example, some of the products which you could sell before the financial crisis, you do not sell them anymore. Products have got simplified, they've got more standardized. So you cannot simply throw away your structured products platform. You want to be able to configure it and change the payoffs without having to change the platform. And I think in this area, definitely Asia and the Middle East, they are currently ahead. Their platforms are more configurable, they are more flexible, simply because they have seen the technology investment into more newer ways of doing things.
Great, thank you, Mahesh. Okay, so now we have the configurability layer on top. So, Josh, to what extent is Mahesh is talking about Asia and the Middle East as being ahead? Is that to do with the thing that maybe we would say in Europe is that they're newer to the game, have less legacy in terms of different elements of their business, or is it just a different way of thinking? They've learned quicker and they've responded quicker to the needs of the market? What do you see as a consultant that probably speaks to a lot of these folks?
I think it's a combination of all those things you've mentioned. I think the key driver in Asia has been the consumer aspect, right, and the willingness to adopt these digital platforms. If you look at kind of Ant Financial's wealth management arm, so from 5 years from launch, they had $169 billion under management, right? And that is a fully digital proposition. How did they do that? Well, they obviously had the clients already on the wider platform, but they looked at technology and leveraged technology in order to cross-sell those products in, right? And the platform that they developed simply recommends funds based on the user profile and the data that they have elsewhere in the company, and the goals of the users. And what they've managed to do there is actually to close the kind of financial literacy gap in that segment of the market, right? And that's fully enabled through technology. And then as you go higher up the kind of value chain, I think we're seeing, because of those consumer aspects, far more investment just coming out of Asia. So if you look at a lot of the global wealth management firms, you'll see a lot of the innovation teams now being based out of Asia. And so you're seeing this innovation ecosystem develop rapidly, right? And so I think all of those aspects feed into it, and yeah, we're seeing the propositions come to market as a result.
Perfect. Actually, that's a good segue into Matteo, your head of innovation. So I know from my journey in wealth management, for instance, started off actually in client insight, actually a lot of projects in client insights, and there was a lot of reticence to do client insight projects. Josh mentions there learning from the consumer. When you're developing infrastructure, technology, tools for wealth managers, where are you looking for your lessons? Is it about the client? Is it about other industries? Can you tell us a little bit more about the things that you're looking at in order to apply lessons and tools for the wealth management user?
Yeah, this is a very good point, because this is another key for offering a good product to your client. No, yes, mainly we get input from many different channels, from the client directly. We have a view. We can propose. Mostly, we propose our view to client. We innovate a lot in terms of, let's say, how an advisor, for example, could interact with a client. AI now is changing the game again, because this is something new that is coming in the field, and it's something that the client doesn't know, and also client doesn't know how to leverage on this technology for improving the way on let's say deliver services with their clients or internal users. I would say that it's very important to hear the point of view of the users. So if you are defining let's say a solution for advisors are the key. Advisors know how they play and they are working right now with their client. I saw some initiative failed, not because technology, not because the application was not working correctly, but because the final solution was not accepted by the final users. Okay, so the users at the end say, yes, that's fair, but I'm using Excel. Why I have to change it? Okay, Excel is fine with me, provides me all the features that I need. I can go to meet my clients. I can put my numbers in the Excel. I have the results. I show the results to the clients, and it works. Why I need another environment that is much complex also to use? That is the key, no? So I would say that, and for this we propose our view. Mostly we propose our view to the client, because we know correctly how they are working right now. We know the technology, and our daily job is figure out how we can use the technology in the right way for improving the daily job of advisors or clients. I would say that if the final user feel that the tool simplifies life, or can help him to do the same, let's say, the same job, extending for example, for much more clients than today, or help him to, let's say, support the daily job with, let's say, processes, automatic process that throw out from his job let's say, the annoying, let's say, tasks. This is the key for us making that acceptable for the final user. AI play a very good role on that, because machine learning, for example, could be very useful for automatize and, let's say, propose let's say next steps, for example, to the advisor automatically without thinking what's the best way on doing a specific task. Could also learn by the day-by-day let's say operation, and propose the best next task to the advisor, just because others as successful with that type of SaaS. So I would say that the key is again, hear the final user, and let's say hear their needs, and propose them a way to simplify their daily job. And just the last point, another important point that is contributing on this change is the regulation. Okay, regulation is improving. Regulation is wide, let's say, used right now, is injected in all the processes of the institution. And regulation means standardization. And when you standardize processes, at that point, digitalization will be the best way to solve or to improve the efficiency of the execution of that processes. This is another good point to put in the table.
Perfect. Thank you, Matteo. Mahesh, I wonder when you go into your clients, what recommendations you give them, or from what you see in front of you, what are the key things that you often tell clients in terms of best ways to maybe easily improve their infrastructure, their processes, and to deliver quicker value?
Yeah, so one of the factors I always look at is how engaged is the end client in the process. So you have broadly, three categories of clients. The ones who are mostly old money, they give the money to the private bank and give some discretion, allow the private bank to manage the money within the criteria, and then they may have a quarterly or monthly review of the portfolio. So this is very much a full delegation model, which is more common in Europe, more common in US, less common in Asia and the Middle East. Second is where they are more transactional. So they are involved in making every decision. They look at the private bank as an advisor rather than the portfolio manager. And yet they will focus a lot more on what the relationship manager is advising to them. So they take the advice from the relationship manager and they will evaluate the performance of the relationship manager based on whether his or her ideas make money or do not make money. Third is where the client would say, I would listen to everybody, but I will do exactly what I want to do. Eventually, I'm responsible for the upside and downside. I make my own choices. This is a third client base. So you can see, broadly speaking, there is a correlation between this behavior and the age. Younger the client, more likely they would say, I make my own choice. I listen to everybody, but I do what I want to do. And in this third client base, you would typically find that they would want a access to the dealer. Direct dealer access, DDA, has become very common phenomena. So yes, I want my banker who will give me the information, give me ideas, play golf with me, keep me up to date with the new mobile app that the client may have got. But I want access to the dealer when the market is moving, call them up immediately and execute my trade. So how do you provide a technology for this ever transitioning client base? If anything, transition will go from A to B to C. More and more clients over time will become more active, more hands-on, especially as the money changes hands, goes from the older generation to the newer generation in Europe. The newer generation in Europe will behave more like the new Asian money. So we need to be prepared for that. So we share our experiences, we tell them how different banks have done it, and we share the use cases and educate them on the value of the use cases, how they can learn from it, maybe even improve upon it and do something different.
Thank you, Mahesh. Josh, that's an interesting point. I think historically the infrastructure was built for the institution and the internal user, the portfolio manager, the relationship manager maybe, but someone within that institution, the client largely wasn't thought of in terms of the use of technology. So how does the market adapt when they've now got users in the institution who are also changing and expecting more, and they've also got users, clients outside of the four walls of the business who also want to use that tech?
Yeah, I think it's important to accept, and I think the industry is accepting that these advanced technologies in terms of AI and machine learning, they exist, right? But they're probably not yet in the product format which will solve the problems for our industry. And so you start on that journey, and I think Matteo touched on a really nice use case in terms of increasing advisor efficiency, right, through kind of next best action systems. And there are solutions coming to market in that space now. I think a really good use case that everybody listening in can refer to is Morgan Stanley's MBA system in the US. So it stands for next best action. And they have reduced the time it takes to propose an individualized investment idea from 45 minutes to instantaneous, right? And the results that they've seen 12 months after launching that technology, on average, each financial advisor is getting 5 to 6 more outbound calls a day, right? So imagine the impact on your business if all of your relationship managers were making 5 to 6 outbound calls a day, even half that, and with really specific tailored information. It could be incredible. But obviously that looking at what it takes to make that change can be can feel quite weighty, right? So I think the important part is to take use cases which seem achievable and work with them, right? Complete them and eventually work your way through to a more complete modern digital proposition.
Thank you, Josh. I'd say one of the Morgan Stanley moving, I've seen Merrill moving, spending hundreds of millions on tech. Is this possible further down the landscape for smaller players? Is the technological toolkit available for them to buy these use cases to develop their business in these ways?
Sorry, your voice is very. There's an echo.
Sorry,
can you repeat it?
Morgan Stanley is obviously a huge player in the market with significant budget to spend hundreds of millions on tech. If a smaller wealth manager has a use case, is the infrastructural capability there for them to apply next best actions and or other technological improvements to their business without that significant outlay?
Yeah, I think that I don't think that there's that the problem is a big or small let's say company that offer services. I think that you, as I said before, you should have a view. Okay, you should have a clear view on what's your goal. All those kind of technology are very good and will change the way the institution will work in the wealth management in the next 3 or 5 years. And maybe tomorrow a new technology will come out. Okay, that is works much better than what is available today. Josh is correct saying that there are AI, for example, right now is a trend, but is not used enough for the moment as a real product into the wealth management solution. And this is exactly what you need, is having a clear view of your business and understand where using that specific technology in which area of your business. This is the key. I don't think that is a matter of let's say service providers. Let's say I would say that the competition here will be growing a lot in the next years. Technology, when a new technology came out, there's a few company that works on that and deliver that. When the technology is more, let's say, stable and is recognized by the client as a sort of commodity, at that point also the adoption is easier and the competition is growing for service provider as us, for example. So again, I would say that having a clear picture of your architecture is the key. Then if you are flexible and if you are able to evolve quickly in the future in terms of technology point of view, at that point is not the most important if you are selecting Morningstar or another data provider, because you can evolve your infrastructure with reducing the cost of your infrastructure and evolve staying on the last trends in terms of technology point of view. So
Mahesh, from your perspective, with AI and machine learning and big data and other elements have been brought into this, what are the pieces that you see either being used most frequently or have the most application now, and or that you think will have the most application in wealth management in the near to medium future?
Right. I mean, both Josh and Matthew are correct in saying that both for AI and machine learning, the number of standard applications is still very limited. And the industry is still evolving, trying to figure out where to best use it. It's clear there will be use for it, but exactly where is unclear. We have seen 2 use cases. One is more in processing older documentation. So any transactions which were not digitalized in the past, and you want to process them and create a digital signature, there is very good value for machine learning, cluster analysis, or more advanced technologies of machine learning can be used there. Second is in the natural language processing. So where the user interface with the end user is not necessarily through pre-designed screens and fields, but more through an intuitive natural language interface. So these are 2 areas we have seen the use of machine learning. Clearly, robo-advisory is an emerging trend. We find that as of now, people are using robo-advisory more as an experiment rather than as their standard tool for delivering advice to the client. But even that is good, because as they use it for experiment, there will be feedback from the users back to the industry, and industry will improve the product, and eventually this will get institutionalized. I would think robo-advisory is more for the mass affluent and retail, not as much for the private banks. But over there in the mass affluent and the retail world, there is a lot of opportunity for robo-advisory as the solution becomes more systematic and more organized. Now, you also mentioned the example of Morgan Stanley, the big budget, and how the smaller players can play in that field. And in the questions, I see one of the questions from some attendee about SaaS. So I thought I'll connect the two and give you kind of a few seconds of my view on that. I think for large banks or small banks, one decision they have to constantly make is a decision between build and buy. How much do they build and how much do they buy? And there is no right or wrong answer. Build will always be more expensive, it will take longer, and buy will be cheaper and it will be quicker to deliver. But at the same time, there are certain things that you want to build because those are proprietary. You want to make them very unique to yourself, very special. You want your client to have a very special experience when they come to you. And you would want to build that rather than buy something standard out of the box. And from the wealth management side, as vendors are providing more and more SaaS solutions, it's becoming cheaper for the industry to buy these solutions off the shelf. One area we have seen SaaS being very effective is in having multi-dealer, multi-issuer platforms. So when a private bank is dealing with more than 20 investment banks, they do not really want to build these pipes to each investment banks for each product by themselves because those pipes are commoditized. They would rather go and buy ready-made pipes which are available on the cloud, and that makes their life easier. And they can then focus on providing a more specialized client journey of their own rather than providing a specialized market journey. So this is where SaaS has played already a big active role in the wealth management industry.
Perfect, thank you, Mahesh. Just quickly coming on to that question, there's a distinction in the question between SaaS and cloud. I don't know if anyone, you guys want to touch on that. So basically the point is vendors are selling cloud when in fact it's SaaS. I don't know if anyone wants to pick up on what the distinction is between the two.
I can take a shot, and Matthew, you can also, and Josh, you can also add to that. So the way we think about SaaS versus installed solution as a solution where in SaaS we control the infrastructure, we as a vendor control it, and in the installed version, the client controls the infrastructure. Now, whether the installed version is inside the client's data center or it's on a private cloud or on a public cloud, it's actually irrelevant. It's not relevant to us. It's very relevant to the client, very, very relevant to them, but not relevant to us. So I may have a solution which is so-called localized or installed solution, but actually the client, the bank, is using Azure. And Azure is in their control. They have their own system administrator who's controlling the Azure cloud. So that solution is on the cloud, but it's not a SaaS. And a SaaS solution is where I provide a solution on the cloud that I have rented, where I control it. So obviously, when you do that, there are advantages of that. Any rollout is fully controlled by me. I need to make sure that I do full regression testing. I provide release notes. I give timely notice to my clients that a new version is coming, right? So those are the main considerations. Equally, from the client's point of view, they have to check, is this SaaS solution secure? Is it ISO compliant? What kind of data am I sending to that solution? Is it customer data? Is it interbank data? Do I have a compliance or regulatory issue in having some of my information being outside my infrastructure on a solution which is controlled by the vendor? So those are the things that the client has to think about.
Yeah, if I can add in this, the fully agree. And here there's another concept that I like so much is the hybrid solution. That the hybrid solution is exactly the combination of what we said just so far. The possibility to have an environment that combine private cloud, for example, or on-premise, let's say, implementation, with private cloud, with public cloud, combine all together with SaaS. So you can choose, for example, a SaaS environment that provides you services for a specific domain. You can connect those services with your private cloud because you have some, let's say, application on your private ecosystem, and connect also data, getting data from the your on-premise environment. For example, connecting your premise environment with a private VPN between your on-premise and the private cloud. If you are able to implement an infrastructure supporting this hybrid configuration, I would say that it's perfect at the point, because you can leverage on the best of all these elements in one single environment that in somehow hide the complexities behind, and allows you just to orchestrate these, let's say, services or functionality together, as correctly was saying before, to define which is the best user experience, which is the best, let's say, processes on top of those services. And yes, I would say that this is the last step on moving, I would say, a legacy system to a modern infrastructure. If you are able to think on hybrid infrastructure, hybrid cloud, I would say that this is the best way on doing it. At that point, also having let's say, independent from the infrastructure as a service. If you link your application to AWS, for example, but tomorrow, because you are invoking AWS services directly, but tomorrow, I don't know, Azure provide the same services in a better way, at that point, you have to somehow to review again your infrastructure to move the entire infrastructure in another infrastructure vendors, no? If you are able in your architecture picture to be independent from the enterprise, the infrastructure provider that is behind, this is another good point, because according to the best infrastructure that will come out tomorrow, you can switch your virtual environment based on AWS or Azure or Google Cloud or whatever else tomorrow. Okay, this is another key point that can be taken in mind whenever I would like to implement a real modern infrastructure and architecture in wealth management.
Picking up another question actually from the audience is about infrastructure as a service in the wealth sector. So I don't know whether any of you have can give any examples of things that you're seeing in the space that are happening. So this whole concept of wealth management as a service is under the whole SaaS model. Is there anything else that you could pick up to provide as an example to those listening in? And this is to any of you.
I don't know if the colleague would like to.
I can't think of any specific examples of infrastructure as a service, but I think if you look at the general direction of the solution kind of providers as a whole to the market, I mean, Matteo, we saw yesterday, the merger, the Finantix went through with InvestCloud, so that's been made public now. Firms are looking to offer wealth managers the complete package, and that's kind of where these solution providers are working towards. So while it might not be available now, I don't know if that's the case or if it isn't. I think that's the direction that we're heading, for sure.
Yeah, there are. I have some experience. There are some specific services for, I don't know, but very simple is for providing a document management system, or let's say a sort of virtual file system. Okay, every infrastructure provider offer those services, but for sure, in terms of let's say functional point of view are the same. But in terms of technology point of view, there are different API, different interfaces. So if your solution is based on AWS native interface, and tomorrow Azure, just for cost, for example, cost the half of the price of AWS, and you would like to change into Azure, you have to review your architecture. You have to reshape, recoding that part, that access to file system, for example. If you are able to have an application logic layer that height in somehow, which is the services that is behind, at that point you can maintain the practically the full stack without any touching that, and still running, and you switch the last mile, let's say the last service behind, without any impact on top of that. And it's just a matter of architecture picture. No technology, no, let's say a library, no framework. It's just a matter of having a good architecture in mind and design a good architecture that is flexible for next improvement of technology.
Perfect. Mahesh, I don't know if you had a view maybe from APAC on this particular topic of infrastructure as a service and how to respond to it.
No, nothing specific. You know, as Matteo said, documentation is one area which can lend itself to infrastructure as a service very well, because the actual service is very standard. As long as you can keep it cloud agnostic, it's very standard. And what really changes from one client to another is the nature of documents they generate, which can be templatized. You can do it through templates. So it's very much a realistic solution to have one single infrastructure which can be used for generating documents of different kinds for different clients, and all cloud agnostic. Absolutely, I think that's a great example.
Perfect. Well, as always, time's flying by. We have 5 minutes left, so I think it would be good just to summarise some final points if we just sort of go around the room. So we want to put in place a modern infrastructure for the wealth management industry. Josh, so what would be your summary points on how firms do that, what they do first and what they think of in lineup?
Well, what I would say is that going on this journey can seem quite daunting, right? And I think the key thing is to just not stand on the sidelines. Wealth managers often say to their clients, the first rule of investing is to get invested and avoid wealth erosion, right? And I think the key here, Matteo touched on earlier, is to, as an organization, you need to invest time and make a viewpoint on what the factors, the success factors for your future are, right? And once you've made that viewpoint, excuse me, develop the principles on which you want to base your future architecture and infrastructure. And we've touched on a lot of them today: open architecture, modularity, use open APIs. Stephen, on your directory, you have over 500 solutions listed, right? So there is no one perfect solution, but the key is to set the foundation and get started on that journey.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. Matteo, it's a complex topic. You've run through different things in terms of layers and new products and ways of thinking about these things, and hybrid cloud, public cloud, all sorts of different elements. So what's the roadmap? Where do firms start? What do they think of? How do they make progress?
You're on mute, Matteo.
That was I.
Sorry. Yes, it's not an easy job. If I am in a bank's shoes, I would first of all, from a point of view, you should have a clear business view in mind. So you have to understand exactly. You have to have clear in mind what is your goal. Okay, first. And again, here, as we said, you have to hear your users. You have to see the markets. You have to, let's say, try to get the best around other let's say in the market, around the competitors or around other clients, and get it. And after that, as I said during the session, I would say the most important part is freedom, is flexibility, because again you risk to have again another legacy in 3 years if you don't think in this way. You have another. You can stick in a specific architecture. I love AWS right now. I married with AWS. I use all AWS as is because now is the best. Well, but tomorrow, what's happening if something else came out and let's say and offer the same AWS in a better way? So having a clear architecture and a flexible architecture that permits you to evolve quickly in the future is the key for supporting this clear business view that you should have in mind.
Great, thank you. And Mahesh, finally, I know you have to leave very shortly. So final commentary, if you can, a summary of what firms need to do.
Yeah, I mean, what I would say is that anyone who's embarking on a technology project should keep timeline as a key factor. And we should not anymore accept these large projects which take 5 years to implement, because by the time they go live, they're already outdated and the business needs have gone ahead. Technology has completely changed. So projects have to be rapid. They have to be nearly fully out of the box. Some element of changes, of course, way of life, we have to accept that. But we should definitely all push back on any projects which are taking multiple years. So time to market to me remains crucial in order to be in line with changing business requirements and changing technology.
Great. Well, thank you, Mahesh. Thank you, Matteo. Thank you. And Josh, thank you again. So much appreciated. All complicated topic, a lot to think about, but I think the market's moving forward. So thank you all. For those listening in, if you have any more questions, please send them through. I'm sure the guys will be happy to answer them. Apologies for some background noise. I think it might have been my end. It was a bit tricky to fix. But yeah, thanks for the discussion. Thank you to the 3 panelists, and we look forward to hosting more Wealth Tech talks in the future, and for you all signing in and listening. So thank you. Have a good day, everyone. And we'll speak soon.
Thank you, everyone.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.